welcome to R.age today. Now, the International Women's Day was held on March 8th last Sunday, and in honor, R.age is dedicating an entire program to women of all ages. So first I ask women if the concept of Cinderella is one which is outdated. You know, the damsel in distress waiting for a prince to rescue her. Or if the modern Cinderella can really take care of herself. Next, I talk to not one but three extraordinary women who made a great impact here in Singapore and even abroad. Every little girl dreams of becoming a princess one day, of meeting a young, handsome prince that will sweep her off her feet and rescue her. But is the modern woman really waiting for someone to sweep her off her feet, or is she quite capable of getting on with her own life? What was she like that you remembered?
She had wicked stepsisters and she was the ousted one, right? And she had to work really hard while the stepsisters slaved away. But at the end of the day, the little girl triumphs and, she meets a Prince Charming, gets to wear a pretty dress and go to a ball. You start.
Cinderella.
Do you remember her at all?
Yeah, I did. You mean the characteristic? She's very kind.
She had evil stepsisters, right? Yeah, and then she was the one with the glass slipper, right? Yes, with the glass slipper.
I think as a child I remember it more as it being rather quaint and rather sexist in a way as well. But it's always a fairy tale. It's always lovely to get dressed up. It's always lovely to find true love.
Do you think that real life is really like that?
Well, I think there are some stories like that, but by far and large, women these days have to work for their keep, and there are lots of modern women out there who do it all, juggle motherhood and active lifestyles, etc., and careers, etc.
I am on the board of the Singapore Dance Theatre. I also am on the board of the Singapore Council of Women's Organisations, and there are plenty of stories there. For the Singapore Dance Theatre, we have our real-life Cinderella. Truly, we had Xia Haiying, who was 17 years old and a folk dancer in China, and she was discovered by her fairy godmother, also known as Madam Go Soo Kim, who brought her to Singapore and transformed her into a world-class ballerina who has graced stages all around the world. And the story gets better because she met her Prince Charming. She got married, and now they're living happily ever after in Singapore.
I guess it's as relevant today as it was all those years ago when it was written as a fairy tale, yeah.
Do you think that women are still waiting for a prince to rescue them?
I think most men and women do look for love in some way, but not perhaps in the traditional way that it always used to be. I think that we can always dream and assume that we might find our knight in shining armour, or the men will find their princesses. But everybody has a different relationship.
I think it's a very individual perspective. What is a knight in shining armor to you might not be a knight in shining armor to me. And I guess in a certain perspective, things that your friends does for you, like small little gesture that you really, really appreciate, that would actually makes it a Cinderella for you for that day.
Modern women are really quite strong today. Like they don't really need to wait for the Prince Charming, but in every woman there's this soft side in them that they would like to see their Prince Charming come one day and really, really just sweep them off on their feet. Yeah.
I think actually a lot of women who work, whom the men are afraid of, and think these women don't need this kind of things. Actually, they are the ones who are actually looking really for their Prince Charming, but they do not want to say it.
Is there any qualities about Cinderella that you can relate to?
Yes, I think as a strong woman, I think that she was very, very strong. She makes her own decisions. She can also daydream. She can also take care of people. She can also make the hard decisions. And I think in today's world that you need to be a strong personality and just stick by what you believe in yourself in your heart.
Yeah, I can relate to her sometimes. Cinderella is basically put to work in things that she doesn't like to do, and I think many of times we are actually in her position. We are put to do things that we don't really like.
She perseveres. I mean, she's like being put in a difficult position, but yet, she comes out of it. Like, she doesn't retaliate, but she quietly, silently, works and make the best out of her situation. Yeah.
I think that with Cinderella, what has always struck me is that this shows a woman's inner strength, that she was really beset with a lot of adversities. She lost her mother, she was persecuted by wicked stepmother and sisters, lost the love of her father, but she still persevered and she kept true to herself, being the sweet, wonderful person that she was born to be. And in the end, she lived happily ever after. So yes, I think those are things that we all want to identify with.
What are some characteristics about Cinderella that you could never identify with? Or you can't really agree with?
For so long.
Not brave enough to say about, yeah.
You don't think the modern woman would be able to put up with so much cruelty?
No, I don't think so, yeah.
Is the concept of Cinderella very outdated? Because she was this very demure, obedient, submissive woman, Women these days, they are not that demure, especially Singaporean ladies. They're quite feisty. What's your opinion on that?
Say that was only in the fairy tale that she was made out to be like that, but you never really know, right? Maybe she was a sexy temptress. And some, foxy fashionista, that she later became. I don't know, you never know, right?
Could the modern Cinderella actually be the Prince Charming who rescues the man? Do you think so?
Well, I think anything can happen. I mean, it's after all, it is a fairy tale, and I think that there's still a lot of childlike ideas in us all.
The Ever After character, she portrayed a more rebellious woman than the Disney. Would you say that that's the more modern kind of Cinderella?
I think Cinderella is always going to be a timeless fairy tale. It's always going to be known around. In whatever way you twist it, it's always going to make it more interesting, of course. And there's always going to be people that like the more traditional version and modern adaptations like Ever After. And I think it's great to see stories just adapting and changing to suit society.
That's a very interesting point that you brought up. What was the old version of Cinderella in comparison to the newer modern version of Cinderella? How would you compare? What qualities would you describe both of them?
I think it's probably about the change of just modern lifestyle and the gender roles. And of course, traditional Cinderella, she's not she doesn't have the strength and the courage to be who she really wants to be.
What do you think describes the modern day Cinderella? What would she be like?
Well, I think today's modern Cinderella is actually a young girl who's starting out in life and thinking, what must she do, especially in this current times of recession? Perhaps she's just finished studying, or she's still studying and wondering what her options are in the future and how she looks towards building her education, her career, with those goals in mind, and perhaps finding a Prince Charming somewhere along the way so that they all can live happily ever after. But I do think it starts from a young girl, perhaps like yourself, who just starting out, right?
Well, it seems that a lot of women are hoping for this young prince to sweep them off their feet. Do you think that that's an inner dream that all of us women have?
I'm always sure that everybody wants to be swept off their feet and then never have to cook, never have to lift a finger, etc. in our dreams. But when it comes down to reality, that isn't quite true. I think real love and marriage takes partnership. Both people have to do their bits. Both have to change the diapers, clean the house, and make the whole marriage thing work together. So I think Cinderella is a nice story.
The modern day
Cinderella. The modern day Cinderella really needs to live it.
Do you think that concept is outdated? The modern day woman should rise up and find happiness rather than wait for it to happen to her.
Well, I think, fortunately for us, today's Cinderella has much more options for her. She has her own education and therefore knowledge. Knowledge is always power. So when you have that and you have your background with you, you can take yourself places and you don't have to depend on someone as much. It's always nice to have friends, male, female, to help you along that journey towards the castle, perhaps, and then perhaps along that way again find a pumpkin that can turn to a carriage.
So our castle is our goals.
Yes, I would think so.
Yeah.
Do you agree that there's a princess or Cinderella in all of us?
Yeah, It would be nice to think that there is, yes.
Of course, definitely. Every girl loves to be a princess.
So while the modern woman might be quite capable and confident, it seems that every woman wants to have a little bit of a Cinderella in them.